Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So a lot of you are asking me about the next big Fortnite crossover on DC TV, so the producers just dropped a whole bunch of information. Happy Monday. So the good news is that even though we haven't even gotten to next season yet, they're already revealing details about what they're going to be doing differently from last year's crossover. So it's all great news, and there's a lot of theories about the stories that they might decide to do because of the teasers they released. So there's a new round of the Flash Ring giveaway. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber, leave a comment on this video about the Flash. Be sure to click that bell to enable alerts so you don't miss anything. So what's happening is that Andrew Kreisberg, the showrunner on The Flash, as well as Supergirl, he's kind of like an executive producer for most of the shows, was talking about this past year's crossover and how everybody was kind of disappointed because Supergirl wasn't a huge part of it. Like, they had a Supergirl episode and then they had their crossover. It was really just like a scene at the very end of the Supergirl episode where Barry and Cisco show up to grab her, then bring her back, and then they start the crossover.
This better be the right place. Because if this isn't the right place, someone's about to be real confused.
So everyone's like, oh, they kind of oversold this 4-night crossover. They kept calling it a 4-night crossover, but really it was a 3-night crossover. So they said that the reason that's going to be different next year is because it will be a true 4-night crossover. And they explained that the only reason that they didn't do like a true 4-night crossover is because they actually had to plan it a year in advance. That's how long it took to get the schedules lined up so that they could have the actors bounce back and forth between all the shows. And it was a logistical nightmare that they actually pulled off pretty well. But the big wrench in their plans was when Supergirl went from CBS to CW. They hadn't planned for that. And that show normally shot in Los Angeles, so you couldn't really cross those characters over in a really big way. But now that Supergirl is being shot up in Vancouver, it's like right next to where they filmed The Flash and Arrow, so they can just like walk right across the street whenever they want for a crossover. That's why you're getting that Flash musical episode, just because they shoot in close proximity. It's way easier for them to do stuff like that now. Whereas previously, it was just a complete nightmare. If you wonder why there are certain characters that aren't on Supergirl this season 2, it's because they went to Vancouver and those actors are like, we're not moving to Vancouver. So the real question I know everyone's asking now is that if they're going to do like a full crossover on their Supergirl episode and she's on a different Earth, what are they going to do about that? Does that mean that all the characters from Earth 1 are going to go to her Earth? If you didn't know, her Earth is called Earth 38 just because that used to be the channel that it was on. CBS was Channel 38 and they affectionately named it Earth CBS, so they just changed it to Earth 38 when CW got the show. They didn't give out any spoilers, but they did talk about having Oliver Queen show up on Supergirl, like the alternate universe version of Oliver Queen. We'll just call him the Van Dyke version of Oliver, just because Stephen Amell has resisted it for so long. We know all about the Earth 2 versions of the characters, but there are a lot of people on Kara's Earth, on Earth 38, that we haven't seen yet. And we also haven't seen Earth 1 Kara yet either, the one that's in Barry and Oliver's universe. But they did sort of downplay Earth 1 Kara showing up. So she's like the only person that they're like, yeah, we're probably not going to do that anytime soon. They said that the alternate universe versions of characters get pretty crazy in the writer's room because it opens this huge can of worms, because it's like, well, you know, if you have like 15 different versions of Oliver, which one is going to be guest starring? Or if you have like 50 different versions of the Flash, which I'll talk about in a second, because that's one of the future crossover stories that they might end up doing, is how do you handle all those different characters when you have them available at the same time? Like, if Savitar is a big problem on the Flash this season, why don't they just get 50 different versions of the Flash to all go at him at the same time? Like, let's all attack him at once, we'll push him into the Speed Force, and we'll cut off his connection using Cisco's vibe powers. If they did something like that, it would be like a 9-episode season. There'd be no more threats anymore. That's why they always take stuff back when they give characters really cool powers. They're like, okay, we have to like depower them a little bit so that they're not super overpowered going into next season. But for the meantime, until they release more information, what it sounds like they'll do is they'll just have some of the characters go to Earth 38 during the first part of the crossover, and then Kara will come back to Earth 1 just like she did during this past year's crossover. So getting into storylines though, I know everybody wonders, like, when are they going to combine Kara's Earth with our universe so that they can just do like their Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline, where everything just kind of gets smashed into the same universe. And there's like a certain case to be made for why that's really cool, just because it'd be an amazing story. But the big advantage to having characters that always exist in alternate realities that you see every week is that you can do really weird stuff and you don't necessarily have to worry about the other writers handling it. Like, it's really hard for Arrow to keep up with all the crazy metahuman stuff that's happening on The Flash, so they only reference it every once in a while. Like, you see a couple times that they'll cross over. But if Supergirl wants to do this big intergalactic story with the Daxamites and Mon-El, they don't have to worry about it on The Flash. Like, that's why The Flash isn't talking about alien invasion every single week. But what about that crossover story? So in the grand tradition of CW crossovers, they tend to favor titles that are really short. So even though they went with the invasion storyline for their crossover, they called it Heroes vs. Aliens. So whatever they do from the comics, it'll be a story that involves all those characters coming together like a big comic book event. And then like the slam that they'll use to promote it will be just something really simple and easy to follow. So what are the most easy to follow big crossover stories that they could possibly do? Well, Infinite Crisis is one of the biggest stories, but that's a story all about them bringing the multiverse back, and we already have the multiverse, so they can't do that. Final Crisis is kind of like a story where Darkseid is able to use the anti-life equation to take over the world, and he sends Batman back in time, and there's all these crazy repercussions, so it's probably not a great story for them to adapt. So if they do a big character that comes to Earth, if it's going to be like a single threat, then Mongol would probably be the person they go with, because they've already established that Mongol and Warworld exist in Supergirl's universe, so that means there's a version of him in the main Earth 1 universe. But one of the greatest stories I think they could have a lot of fun with would be Grant Morrison's Multiversity, which is this really crazy, trippy story about a team of Justice Leaguers that form from multiverse characters, which is kind of what we already have already because Kara is from a different Earth. The story for that was really crazy. You basically have this intergalactic group of parasites known as the Gentry that want to take over the minds of everybody in all of creation. So all of creation, the multiverse, has to team up to fight them. But the problem with that is that in true form, Grant Morrison writes crazy stories that are really hard to adapt into movies and TV shows, but they make for badass comic book stories. So what is like the really simple idea, like the really simple title comic book thing that happened this past year? Big crossover event. DC just reinvigorated their comics. It's called Rebirth. So what if the TV shows did their own version of the Rebirth storyline? So I'm not talking about like completely rewriting their continuity, because that was one of the goals of DC Rebirth, was to sort of fix their continuity just a little bit. But the overarching story was how they missed all these 10 years. Somebody stole 10 years from the DC universe, so it becomes this Watchmen-inspired Batman-Flash team-up story where they do all this detective work to find out what Dr. Manhattan did to steal hope from the DC universe. So they could do a version of that, but just in the way they changed the Invasion comic book storyline, they did a much simpler version, and it was fairly original with just like a few beats from the comic book. They would probably do the same thing for any other big comic book arc. So let me know in the comments, which storyline do you want them to adapt for next year's crossover? Whatever it ends up being, just make sure it involves all the characters and it isn't a storyline that they've already done. So like Mongol is big with Black Mercy. They're probably not going to do another Black Mercy episode just because they did that during Supergirl season 1. But the cool thing that they're introducing on Supergirl right now is the Legion of Superheroes. So what they might do is they might choose a Legion-oriented story for their next big crossover if they can ramp up. The thing is they don't actually have to write the crossover episode till the fall. So like if some big storyline goes sideways and they want to go in a different direction, like if Supergirl doesn't pan out the way they wanted to, and they're like, okay, Legion isn't something that we're going to do in the future, they can change their minds down the road. They don't have to like lock in right now. But speaking of big crossovers, there's a couple big Marvel things that I'll be talking about later today. You guys can let me know which video you want me to do. So I think I'm going to try and do Marvel Mondays, where I do like one Marvel bonus video no matter what's happening. So they just teased a Wolverine Hulk hybrid in the comics. I can do a video about that. That's just a teaser they released so we can freak out about that. Or 2, I can do a video about Spider-Man Homecoming in the Kingpin wanting to beat the crap out of Spider-Man. Vincent D'Onofrio is like, make it happen. You know my phone number. Like, he is so ready to be in a Spider-Man movie. But there's a number of different ways they could cross those characters over. It's just that Kingpin is such a big character for Spider-Man that you have to do him at some point. So let me know which video you guys want me to do next. And then obviously new Flash episode coming tomorrow. There's a bunch of DC stuff that happened. Suicide Squad even won an Oscar for makeup and hair. It's crazy. So congratulations to last week's Flash giveaway winner, Brandon Alcudia. Please private message me on the back end of my channel so I can get your contact details. There was a new round that started in this video. I'll just announce the winner when I post my Flash video tomorrow. But new Marvel coming in a couple hours, and you guys still have plenty of time to leave your requests in the comments before I start working on it. While you wait for that, you can click here for the new Guardians of the Galaxy trailer, and you can click here for the trailer for the next episode of The Flash. Thank you so much for watching. Let's high five. I'll see you guys in the next video.